YouTube, Brad Phillips. We've got something new and exciting to open.
Sorry, I shouldn't start laughing already.
I'm laughing because I know what people are going to say about how new it is. It's actually a 10th anniversary edition of the Timber 1.5. So
You didn't even open the box before you told them.
well, I know I'm not supposed to do that, but I did it anyway.
They saw the thumbnail.
So 10th anniversary, here it is, the E-flite timber. Yes, it's another timber, but we're gonna open it anyway because the timber is a great plane and we're gonna see how this one does. We have not touched our last timber for some time, so we're hoping that this skill level 2 aircraft still brings us joy. That being said, if you've never had a timber, there are many of them available in different size classes, and we really like them. So the truth is, what's the biggest timber that we have right now? There's the 1.7.
We have the SWS, which is a 2 meter.
Which is a 2 meter, but that's a balsa wood plane.
Yep.
Yep, and then there's also the 1.7, and then there's the twin, which is 1.6 meter, but it's quite a bit different plane. One thing I like about the anniversary edition is it goes back to the non-supercharged or super turboprop style nose. So it looks more like this normal engine cowl here, and it's got a two-bladed prop. So I'm excited to see this. I want to see how it does. I loved the original, and I literally flew it until the entire engine, motor, and battery ripped out and flew out as I was trying to sell it to a friend.
Sorry, Esteban.
Sorry, Esteban. It was
He probably still bought it.
Yeah, I think he did, but I don't think I made any money on it. It was a long time coming. We had many terrible crashes with that plane.
Yeah.
And it was super fun doing every one of them. That being said, if you guys are brand new to Brian Phillips RC, welcome to Brian Phillips RC. This is where we unbox them. We build them, we set them up start to finish, so you don't have to be an expert. We'll try to get you up to speed. And of course, what we are doing here is trying to take people out of the chair and into the air, showing the latest and greatest in RC innovations. Of course, this being a 10-year anniversary tells you that it's been around for some time, and it's made by a product line from E-flite, which is a Verizon hobby company. Now this is a product development sample, and that's how we have it early, and it's helpful to us because we do early releases here on this channel, and so we need some time to actually do the work. And so thankfully we had plenty of time on this one. We just don't have plenty of weather. Okay, so we'll unpackage this and show you each of the steps. But if you do see a little extra wear and tear, that's because ours has already been played with, okay? All right, so we've got one of the wings. Looks like we've got some wires here. And it does have that weird goofy connector, which is pre-built. Now, if you ever decide you wanna cut this off and do your own, you can do that too. We've got new covers here, it looks like. I don't remember seeing those. They're accessible, which is nice. And it looks like everything is shaped in the wing. Of course, they have contact points here that you can pull off and put a leading edge slat on. And we've got the LED package, which is noted, it's very good on the timber. A little bit of reinforcement for plastic here. Nice solid wing. It's actually a hollow core wing, but it feels solid, okay? So not a lot of twist in there, and really robust connection point in the center. It looks like, why would you have a wing separate like that? Well, so they can make the package considerably smaller. This is a 1.5 meter plane. That's a 1.6 right there, that Catalina. That's a 2 meter behind it. I think that the Airbus 320, isn't that a 1.5?
I don't know, because it's...
I'm struggling to remember, and then the Super Tucano is a 1.6. That's a 1.7 right there, and then the J3 Cub that you see poking out from the half wall there, that is a, like 1800, it's like 57 inches, I think. So just to give you an idea, this is a big plane, and it's not a terrible, like beginner-esque type of plane. Now, is it the first plane that you should buy? I don't know, that's yet to be determined. Also, floats in the box, which is a big deal. Now, this includes optional float set and leading edge slats, okay? So this float set, of course, is like that. And then there's a linkage with a spring-loaded return to center. And then I think you actually have to run a servo to the rudder, or there's strings that tie to the rudder on this. We'll investigate closer when we get to that point. But just full disclosure, we have actually done videos with floats of our original timber. When we used to live in town, we had 3 ponds in our neighborhood, and we were able to fly from pond to pond. It was super fun, and a goose attacked it. It was very fun. All right, so here we go. Oldie but goodie, but we've got the new soft tire. These are very good for softness. You can do off-road ops, you can do on-road ops. It's really up to you. And then springs, you don't have to worry about. Some of the competitive offerings have rubber bands. This has always had springs. Some people had problems with the springs breaking, so I think they've redesigned those slightly. I think I broke 1 spring over the course of many timbers that we've done, and it was an easy thing to get. You can obviously get parts for these because E-flite does keep those in stock most of the time. Assembly on the landing gear is very nice. It's got a splaying landing gear, so it'll spring out like this when you have a really rough landing, but then also the soft tires help to complement that. And you'll notice it's a little bit simpler mechanism up here. They used to have a contact point in the center, and I think they've eliminated that, unless I'm mistaken. I've done so many planes over the years. It's hard to keep them straight.
It is.
Okay, so we'll just keep going. If you guys are brand new to the hobby though, we're gonna try to get you up to speed in a timely manner. That does not mean that we're gonna have short content. Our videos are long, sometimes tedious, some would argue painful.
Me? Oh, not me?
Yeah, we're talking about the viewers here.
Oh, sorry.
But at the end of the day, we really do love bringing you guys good, actionable advice, and then you can make the best of it, okay? That was a little scary. This bag is slick, by the way, be careful. I'm just kind of unpacking things onto the table here. As you can see with the fuse design, it's a little bit slick, nice and smooth, by the way.
It is.
They've really improved the way that these models come out of the packaging. Just absolutely gorgeous. I really like this style too. By the way, I hated that the first time, I still hate it. And it's a stupid little plug thing that's in there. It's like a shipping thing.
Yeah.
But I have never understood exactly why they have it. And it's totally bizarre. Oh, although, look, the cowl is plastic. I don't remember that being plastic. Where's the battery going? Aha, top load. Yes, nice. Okay, so that would be similar to like the Timber X, the Night Timber. And so beautiful, nice mount for the AR631 Plus. Of course, this will be equipped with AS3X Plus. Now, for those of you that don't know, AS3X Plus is just a small upgrade. If you want to call it a small upgrade on, you can see a little evidence of being used there, guys, a little dirt. And then these are the connection points that'll go down to the floats should you decide to use them. And we've got this goofy style clip, works really good though. Super easy, and a very robust connection point for the tail feathers. And that allows us to have this nice slender, but still strong and sturdy rudder, okay? So we've seen a million different designs. In fact, there's a couple of competitive offerings in this size class on PA-18s that are super similar model. And they have a kind of a clunky tail. It's one of the drawbacks of that particular model, in my opinion. This one keeps it nice and tight and it looks good. Haven't had any issues with fluttering or breaking, and that was something we saw with earlier versions of the red and white one, 1.2 meter and 1.5 meter. Trainer, trying to think of what it is. Dang it, I'm drawing a blank right now. But it had a flat horizontal stabilizer and vertical stabilizer. It was just very wiggly, and they were super easy to break, and they're made of super soft foam. This is EPO, that was EPS. What am I trying to say? Not the Apprentice. Was it the Apprentice? Yeah, it was the regular Apprentice.
The original Apprentice?
The original 1.5 meter Apprentice. Oh. Yeah, and not the one with the downward facing sensor. That was before our time. I actually had one of those from my grandpa who had purchased it. And this was well before we did our YouTube channel. But getting into the second and third generations of the Apprentice, very good model. But this thing fixes that. Also, this is a lot more capable model. I mean, in every way than the Apprentice. So if you are looking for a beginner plane, this is a lot of plane for a beginner, but it's a good value for a lot of plane, okay? Spinner, screw, your screw might come in a bag. That screw is going to go in here. It's going to hold that on, and then very simple mount. By the way, the size class on this would be an 11.6 by 6. 11.6 by 6, a very strange step. So we would call that probably a custom size. So if you get another prop, you may be able to size up, you may be able to size down slightly. Just keep in mind, if you increase, now if you don't know what that size is, here on Brian Phillips RC, we do these little diversions to teach people things. This is 11.6 from here to here, and 6 is the pitch, okay? So my understanding, the way I was taught, and this could be wrong, is that if this was a 7, it would be a steeper pitch. If this was a 12, it'd be an extremely steep pitch. But it almost always tapers out to flat at the end of the blade. Not always, but most of the time, the blade has a twist, okay? So it's gonna twist out and end up being flat out here, because as it purchases the air, it pulls it in and shoots it out, right? Well, I was always taught that this was kind of how you got your 6 from. And there's some sort of a measurement that teaches us how far it's gonna move, and I don't know, at rated speed or whatever. But here's the moral of the story. If you put a more aggressive pitch on this same power system, which probably could handle a little bit more, then this more aggressive pitch is gonna demand more current, and therefore it will be closer to overheating. And it's also gonna be a little bit more demand on your LiPo, which is the battery that goes in here, a lithium polymer flight pack or battery, okay? And so just keep in mind, if you go bigger out like this, you can usually go less aggressive on the pitch, and you'll get a little bit more poppy low end power, but a little bit lower top end speed. On a plane like this, you're gonna wanna defer toward probably low end power to get out of the hole, get off the ground. This is a STOL plane, short takeoff or landing. That's what STOL stands for, short takeoff or landing. And so those less aggressive pitch props that are a little bit longer are gonna give you more pull at the low end. It's gonna get you out of the hole. And also when you're doing crazy 3D things, you know, trying to hover, hammerhead, things like that, it's gonna be a little bit more resilient. Now also, the lower pitch, it depends on the prop design, of course, but when they're lower pitch, sometimes they get a little bit flatter and they're a little bit more wiggly. And so you will notice a little bit noisier props, and they'll buff it sometimes if you get real cheap ones. That's a well-designed prop. You can also tell from just the shape of it. Okay, so just looking into the package, you can see what's in there. We obviously have the floats in here. I'll just pull one of them out. Now, we're not gonna do floats on this, even though we do have a pond. Let's show them why we're not gonna do floats right now. As you can see, we have the new building. The damn gift shop is getting built. We have garage doors coming right now. The hydraulic doors installed, but not clad yet with siding. And as you can see, it is frozen. So our pond is frozen, so we're obviously not going to be flying from floats, but we'll show you what this float looks like. And what we like to do, and this is not necessarily something that will work for everybody, but we will keep the floats in a package for a particular plane, and then we mark what it is. Because a lot of these float systems are the same from plane to plane, but you know what's not the same? The wires that attach them to the plane. And so if you don't mark them, it's very easy to mix up the components, okay? So let's see how these floats are designed, and you can make up your own mind if it's gonna be a good value or not for your application. Now, there may be an offering with or without floats. Ours happen to come with floats. So this goes down like that, and then there's a reinforcement member in there. And then this has been beat up a little bit, it looks like. Then we've got this little splash guard. It's glued on with this weird silicone type glue. It's kind of like a rubbery silicone. And then back here we have a spring-loaded, spring return, and also if you want to fly on snow, this will push out of the way, which is really fun. But just keep in mind the snow is pretty rough on these floats, so if you do a lot of snow flying, especially when you get icy snow, you can tear the hell out of these. So just be aware that it is a factor you want to be aware of. Also, they've improved the cleat design here. Looks like it'll be easy to put this stuff together. Single screws on each side, which is really nice. Everything goes in from the top. It's not a hard process, but it is a process, and so you'll want to be prepared for a little bit longer build time. Okay, so now we're going to continue. Also underneath this packaging is the wires. Can you just come around here and show them, please? Look, right here. We've got this white wire, and then we've got these white separation pieces, and it looks like that would normally slide out just like this, okay? So there's gonna be all like the struts and things that will create this design to kind of hold everything apart from one another. And then there's long struts that go this way to kind of keep everything squared up. You'll be surprised when you get into floats, when you have a crappy pair of floats, they don't really add much to the model, but these are good. So we know from experience, and you'll just have to take our word for it on this one because we're not gonna be flying it on floats right away. That being said, nothing wrong with floats, and if you live on a body of water or you want to do a lot of float flying, this would definitely be a good choice. The timbers have been historically very good, and with now top loading, this makes it so much easier to actually get the battery in there. Also, they brought a bind plug forward. Looks like it's equipped with an EC3, excuse me, an IC3 rather, not an EC3. EC3 would be like an E-flite connector. And then we'll get this pesky safety warning off of here right now. Normally I'd do that with scissors, but I just want to get that. Oops, fell off into the garbage can, strange. Also, serviceability is much better. We have big, beefy carbon fiber tubes that go down the length of the plane. This thing is just rock solid. I mean, I can't really twist it at all, which is a good test of the quality and build. Also, beacon top, beacon bottom, which is really nice. I like to call them anti-crash beacons. Some people get on my case about that occasionally because they're not always anti-crash beacons, but that's what I call them. All right, so then I'm kind of a sucker for scale planes. So if you guys haven't noticed that about Brian Phillips RC and just the general feel of the channel, that is my preference. Fixed wing, and then close second would be scale helicopters. And we do a lot of helicopters here too, but I am significantly better airplane pilot than I am a helicopter pilot, but I'm getting better at the helicopter stuff. By the way, if you fly helicopters and you want to learn to fly airplanes, we'll try to get you there too. It is a different skill set. It's not a given that you'll be able to fly an airplane if you can fly a helicopter, but if you can fly a helicopter, you can probably fly an airplane. Biggest difference is you can't stop. You got to keep flying, and that is something that drone pilots have trouble with when they first switch over. And the other thing is when you on a mode 2, you've got your throttle over here and your rudder and your ailerons and your elevator. A lot of drone pilots will throttle when they crash because they're trying to get out of the hole to get out of a problem point. And same thing can be true for some heli pilots because they'll try to blast out and get some altitude. Airplanes, you want to tend to cut power. So you'll tend to find when you have a friend that comes and flies at the flight field or hangs out with you and it's like, why do you always nail the ground when you crash? Well, it's because I'm trying to get out of trouble. It's like an instinctive reaction. At least that's something you have to break. Okay. So we'll slide this sleeve off of this wing, looks good. And I don't know if you guys could tell that from the first wing, there's a linkage that goes through there and actually actuates the aileron. It's all pocketed in there, looks really good, really clean. Got a nice pocket. I don't like to overdrive servos like that, but I'll do that for a demonstration here. And then of course the flap is makes a slot. So it's a slotted flap there. I think that might be called a Fowler flap, but I'm just gonna go with slotted flap for now. And very, very good, very clean design. And yes, of course, you will be running a separate channel for flaps and ailerons, okay? If you wanna add spoilerons and flaperons, so you could do a full-length flap, that is possible, but just keep in mind that on this particular model, the flaps do not go up. They only go flush, okay? So if you intend to do a full-length aileron, you're only gonna get the benefit of the full-length aileron performance with that drooping flap. You're also gonna have this setback here, okay? So it's not gonna be a very super aerodynamically wise decision in my opinion, but I know a lot of people like to do that on the Carbon Z, and they kind of have, I think those ones can go up, so you can do a full length. But you can set this up if you decided to do that. I just don't have any interest in it. I think we have plenty of roll authority to do all the craziest things I would want to do. That being said, I'm not a huge 3D pilot. It's not my bread and butter, but some of you guys it is, okay? If that's what you really want, the Timber X is probably where you want to be. The Timber X is a 1.2 meter size, And the Night Timber X is just gonna add additional lighting in there. Really good, really insane, slightly different trim liveries. So if you get those, both good planes. I'm not a huge fan of it. My son likes it more because he does more 3D. 1.5 meter is where it's at for me. I think it's a great middle point, very solid performance. This is gonna have a little wiggle to it because the strapping is limited for reinforcement. And also, you're gonna notice that these have reinforced hinges that are not only glue joined, I think these ones are tape joined too. Nope, they're just glue joined. So they have a pinch hinge. So when they make this in the mold, it just pinches the foam into a near closure. So it's not cutting it, but it's pinching it. And then they have these installed in there. They must drop those hinges in to the mold jig, and then they actually mold the foam around it. Very high density, but not so high density that you don't get any give on them. Okay, so kind of got that rubbery feel and a little bit heavier than an EPS like you would see on an Ultra Micro. These are EPO. There's different density ratings on EPO, and they have been slowly working higher densities into the more higher performance, higher speed models. And then the lower densities are staying for the more likely to crash models, the 3D performers. Here's an example. The carbon, or excuse me, not the carbon, what was the, we just had a new fast.
Oh, yeah.
It's like a warm liner.
The
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank
Electrostreak.
Electrostreak, exactly.
Gosh.
Which was a lot like the Crescendo. It was
Yep.
like the Crescendo had a love child with some sort of like a Havoc or, you know, and it was very fast. And it still is fast. I don't know why I'm saying it like it's in the past. The truth is that one has one of the highest densities that we've seen, similar to like the V900 or the V1200, where you got a really dense, hard finish, but it's still made of the same foam. It's just got more foam packed into the same package. You get a more dense, heavier plane. They keep these light by doing that softer foam. They also make it more resilient to damage. Like the Crescendo Evo compared to the Crescendo Advance compared to the Crescendo, that thing was wiggly as all get out. You could drop it, the tail wouldn't break as easy. Then you go to Crescendo Advance, it was a little bit more dense and you could break the tail off all of a sudden. Then you go to Crescendo Evo, which, you know, now all of a sudden you're doing 4S instead of 2S on the original, and you can fly the thing like a bat out of hell, but it's more likely to break even still because it's got an even higher density. I don't know if it's a lot higher density than the Advance, but it was a big change, okay? So that being said, this is back to just what we're used to on the 1.2, 1.5 meter warbird sizes, and good density. It's a good balance between sustaining good flight performance and having a little bit of resiliency to damage. Of course, wing spar here, really big. You can hear that twang, which tells you it's carbon fiber. And you can see how thick that sidewall is. Look at it.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It is. That's really big.
That is a very thick sidewall. So that's going to give you tons of strength. Of course, you know, when you get thick like that, you're just, it's basically what happens is in an airplane, you always have the weakest point, right? And there can be a cascading failure on a structural stability of an airplane. But in this case, look at that, super strong carbon fiber for the tail. Remember the tail was a little wiggly? It's because we're gonna be doing that. Now these are the leading edge slats. Okay, so I am a big proponent of leading edge slats. Not everybody is going to want leading edge slats. If you want to do a little bit faster flight performance, you're going to want to maybe leave off the leading edge slats. And it's also a cleaner aerodynamic appeal for people that really want to get into like heavy 3D, in my opinion. But leading edge slats do one thing really well, and that is to change the stall tendency at higher angles of attack. It's going to help prevent the separation of the airflow, which is where we get stall. Okay, stall is where you lose lift. Okay, why does that happen? Because it helps to force a new vein of air right over the top of the wing, because it makes a small wing on the front of it. And that's what a leading edge slat does. Now, this is a fixed leading edge slat. There are active leading edge slats, like for instance on this Micro Draco, we can demonstrate this Micro Draco, or actually there's two sets of leading edge slats on the Scrappy in the real model, but not on that. This, of course, is demonstrated here just as a molded line. This would come down actively on the real Draco. Of course, the real Draco's crashed. It's no longer in the history of time and space, but I think he's working on a new one. Mike Patey is. This one here has 2 sets, which was super cool. And they kind of articulated out whoosh, like this. They would, a little bit exaggerated, of course. But these are labeled as right and left, okay? So those are gonna get glued on. Now, the glue does not come with the plane, full disclosure, just know that that's true. So since this is upside down, my left is here and my right is here. But that's very weird. They have an R that's mounted this way and then an L that's upside down. That's very confusing.
Weird.
That's why I was struggling so much to get those laid out.
Okay.
I don't know if you guys picked up on that, but show them a close-up of that if they can't see. So at the end of the day, these are the pieces. Oh, and then this is if you want to do more heavy 3D, okay? This is I don't know if that's steel. I think it's steel. Might be aluminum, but I think it's steel. This is a rod that you can use for more heavy 3D. And what this does is instead of having this carbon fiber spar, you would use the steel spar, and it's gonna bring a lot of weight to the back of the plane so that you can shift the center of gravity aft or back, okay? So shifting the center of gravity aft makes your plane realize a more tail-heavy configuration, okay? Tail-heavy planes are gonna be able to do more incredible 3D performance without having, you can only shift the battery so far back. And plus the battery is in front of the center of gravity a lot on this plane. Okay, a lot of planes, you're gonna end up having the battery right in the center of the plane. And you can slide that back to make a little bit more tail heavy center of gravity, or you can slide it forward to make it a little bit more nose heavy. More nose heavy planes tend to be more overstable. And a center of gravity that's spot on to what the manufacturer's plan was is gonna pivot the best on the wing, on the center of gravity, using the provided elevator throws, okay? Because remember, when a plane actuates, it's actuating on a center of gravity, okay? So it's balancing, okay? And it's just flying through time and space. And then all we do is we take this small little device called an elevator, and then we pivot the direction of travel. We change the angle of attack, and that's how we do that. Now, if your center of gravity, okay, goes forward, then it's gonna be more tail heavy when you try to balance it on your fingers, right? But if you go back, it becomes more nose heavy. So it's more like you could just throw that, you know, atlatl, or you could throw the spear. And if the spear is really heavy on the end, it's just gonna fly really stable. But if that weight's on the back, you're gonna throw it, it's gonna flop all over the place. The same is true on an aircraft, but there's quite a minimum, you know, more aerodynamic effects and balancing and gravity and all these things. By the way, look, that thing's broke. I'll have to fix that.
Oh, yeah.
Is it glued on there wrong, or is it just broken?
I think it got glued on wrong. It is attached, it's not broken off.
Okay, so I'll just have to re-glue that. So we do point those things out when we see, that may not be an actual manufacturing flaw. That might just be a flaw from sitting in the package wrong. Again, these are early samples, so they've been through product development, and people have basically played with them to see if they're gonna work right and done testing, okay? So getting back to the point, the center of gravity makes a difference. This is some Velcro to help with the battery mount. This helps hold the wing together. We've got a couple of screws that hold that down into the wing, which we'll get to. And then they do actually provide some additional counterweights, or those might be heat sinks, but it looks like counterweights to me. And then we have a bag full of screws, a couple of screws and washers, a few more screws, and then these look like landing gear screws, and then a bind plug. Now the bind plug has an extension cord on it on this particular model so that you can have the wing mounted and still bind. But keep in mind, there's another way to do that, and we're gonna be getting to that shortly when we do our radio setup. Radio setup, of course, is part of our Unbox build radio setup, which is what we do here on Brian Phillips RC. So I like to take the lanyard off because I do fly with a lanyard, and this is the NX8 Plus. We just opened this up. We got one plane on there, and I'm just not retiring because I've got 250 plus models. You're only supposed to be able to get 250 on Airware, which is the program that this runs. But I have quite a bit more. And then we have, of course, the NX7 has a few of our models. And then we have another NX8, and we have a DX18, and we have another NX8, and we have another NX6, and we have a lot of different transmitters. But right now, we're just getting ready to go into the NX8. Why 8? Why not 10? Brian, you have hundreds of planes. Why would you not stick with the 10? I don't use the sliders, okay? So I don't need them. And I don't need the Hall Effects gimbals. I can't tell the difference. So I don't care. Now, you might get real heavy on your sticks and need the Hall Effects gimbals so you can have a little bit more precision and reliability and functionality. But I've never had a problem with these. We started with the, without having Hall Effects gimbals, okay? That being said, the NX8 so far has been good. Our number one complaint on all of the NX, any of them, is that eventually your scrolly will get wet because you do something stupid like fly in the rain, and then you might invite some difficulty, which we have usually been able to resolve by wiping this with an alcohol wipe or just putting some isopropyl alcohol on a rag, wiping this, scrolling it a few times, and just doing that periodically. It seems to bring it back to life. Also, if you ever do have a legitimate failure of your transmitter, this is heartbreaking when you do have that happen because you got to get these things fixed somehow because you don't want to lose all your models. You can send these in, but full disclosure, for those of you that don't know, there is a memory card slot here, but get this. If you were to open this up, there's another memory card about here that you can take out and you can move that to a different transmitter. So if it's dead, you can actually save that. There's 2 drives on this. All right, okay, lots of details from Brian Phillips RC. We don't need to overwhelm people, but we know that there's a lot of people that are brand new to the hobby and just really need help. And that's what we aim to do on this channel, is not necessarily to intentionally overwhelm you with details that may not make sense or be relevant to you. It's really hard for us to tell exactly where you are. So we have to assume as we work through the process of building these models, what types of problems you might run into. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna keep doing the best we can to teach as many people as much stuff as we can possibly teach them within a given time frame of multiple hour videos. So we're gonna come right back and do the build next, and then we'll do radio setup to follow. We're between steps. Let's talk about batteries. We're gonna be using a 50C. I don't think it calls for a 50C. You can use a 30C. So full disclosure, you could use a 30C. But my recommendation is anytime you buy a smart battery or any other battery for that matter, get the highest C rating that you can afford that still makes sense, okay? You're usually not gonna regret getting a higher C pack because the $2 or $3 or $5 or $7 difference in price is gonna be quickly forgotten when you have better performance for the entire time you use the pack. Now that being said, if you have a battery that you're not sure you're gonna use a lot, that might be the only caveat I would make to that. But even still, I mean, I'm not saying to go get a 120C pack or some crazy number, but these 50Cs seem to be a really good, happy, medium, middle of the road, okay? And you don't gain a lot of weight by going to a 50C from a 30C. You might be talking about a couple of grams. So if you don't know how to charge these, smart chargers are super nice. I like to use the S2200. They come equipped with an IC3 and an IC5, which is really nice. And so in my case, I'm just gonna plug these in. They've already been programmed to my auto discharge timeline, which I set these to 240 hours. And we also will occasionally charge at a really high charge rate, but if you don't know what the charge rate is, so you don't have to even do anything. Once they're set up, then you just basically plug them in and go, okay? So this one's gonna spool up to the current rate, and it's set to 1C. And then this one is set to 1C as well. Now, sometimes, particularly on the 5006Ss, for whatever reason, these packs are the packs that I always charge really fast because they inevitably are always discharged by the time I'm ready to use them again. And so I charge these at the max, almost always, which is 25 amps. This charger, I believe when you're doing 2, can only handle like 20 amps each. But that is a lot of power to move into a battery, okay? So just keep in mind, you can see how many milliamp hours are flowed into by tabulating. It's gonna tell you how many have gone into this particular pack on cell 1, and then this particular pack on channel 1, channel 2 rather. And so you'll know how much went into it. So after you're done flying your plane, you can say this is a 3200 milliamp hour pack. And instead of like looking at your voltages, which are pretty much always going to float between 4.2 at full charge, all the way down to like maybe 3.7 or 3.6 or 2.8 if you're like me, and you over discharge everything, then you'll be able to tell where the voltage is. But that doesn't tell you how much power you actually put in the battery. Instead, on that top screen, you can see you're putting 67 milliamp hours in. Now, for a guy like me that has thousands, if not, multiple thousands of batteries, you gotta just keep in mind, auto discharging is one of the biggest safety features you can do for LiPos. It's also good for the life of the cell. But to me, it drives me crazy because I paid to charge this battery and then I never got any value out of it. And that really irritates me because you're putting power in. I'm paying the power company, which in my case is Mother Nature because we have solar panels, but I paid for those a lot. And then I have backup batteries downstairs that are like 900 pounds of batteries. So it's a lot more than this. So anybody who's concerned about battery safety, just remember I have much bigger fish to fry and it's about right there. So if you ever hear about fires, just remember the biggest safety issue you can have that's within your control, if you're gonna have a lot of LiPos, is to A, get rid of LiPos that are puffing up, and B, don't charge them too fast. Charge within spec if you can. Don't change the battery type. Don't charge wrong, meaning set them up for the NiCad when it's a LiPo. That'll cause all sorts of grief. Or lead acid and then charge them as a LiPo. You can catch them on fire. You can blow them up. And also don't pierce the packs. And if you have a crash and it's questionable, get it out of your house. Leave it on the sidewalk or whatever until you're sure that you can manage the safe disposal of those batteries. Now, this is not the nanny state here on Brian Phillips RC. We understand you guys are big boys and girls. You can handle it. It's up to you. But we do want to make sure there's 2 caveats for safety we talk about. We don't talk about hitting yourself in the head because people don't do it very often. But we do talk about prop safety. We do talk about throttle cut a lot, which is along the lines of throttle cut is going to help protect most people. And I do it religiously. Throttle cut's on. You'll hear me say it all the time. It's an instinctive reaction. When I go into a ready fly that doesn't have throttle cut, it irritates me to no extent, okay? The second thing we talk about is battery safety. Battery maintenance is a pain in the butt. That's why smart batteries make sense for us. I got thousands of batteries. You might have 4. If you have 4, it's not that big a deal. You get a dumb pack, like here's an example of a dumb pack. Brand is irrelative. This is a 3300 4S. Doesn't really matter. It's got an XT60 instead of an IC3. This battery would work fine in this plane. There's nothing wrong with it, but I have to manage this battery. Meaning if I charge this up and I don't use it and I come back to it 6 months later, first of all, it's gonna be like what I like to call a stale pack. And who knows what it's gonna do for chemistry, because when you're at the top of the range, the chemistry is the most active and it will wear and tear on that chemistry in these packs, okay? That's the way that works. You don't have to agree with me. I have proven it over years and years and years of ruining LiPos, okay? If you have a pack that sits charged for years, it's gonna tend to puff, okay? The best thing you can do is discharge that thing after, maybe 5 or 6 days if you know you're not gonna use it. Maybe at the end of the week, if you haven't had a chance to fly what you thought you were gonna fly, you can discharge. Or get a really good charger, fly your plane, leave it in a discharge state so long as it's not at like 2.8, like some idiot flew it like me, and then bring it to 3.8, which is called storage voltage, or 3.9 for smart batteries, which, by the way, is all automatically handled by a smart chip. By the way, if you don't know what a smart chip looks like, a smart chip looks like this. That's a smart chip. And yes, this is from a dead battery. This happens to be from a 3S because there's only 4 wires, okay? And that's the IC3. And this is the little smart chip. Now this is a Gen 1 pack, so the Gen 2 is a little bit slightly different circuitry, but it's gonna not have your balance lead, okay? I like Gen 1s, I like Gen 2s. I really don't think that Gen 1 is inferior to Gen 2. I just think that, there are certain planes where having that balance lead gets in the way, and there are certain planes where you need the balance lead so you can put in a voltage alarm. And if you don't know what that is, it would look a little something like this. This happens to be a Predator branded, but who cares? They're a dime a dozen. We don't care what brand you get. We do have links to all sorts of stuff, just like this, that would be really good for testing a battery as long as you have a smart port. But if you don't, you can get the XBC 200. Very good plug for this tool. It is a good tool. I would highly recommend getting the XBC 200 if you've already got an XBC 100. Phenomenal tool, very good. Primary advantage here, you can go straight in with an IC5, which we do all the time, or an IC2, which we don't that often, but it is nice because you don't have to have adapters with you. One trade-off down from the 1 to the 2 is you lose this USB-A. But you know what? You can't charge off of that, we found, which is annoying because I thought that'd be a cool way to maybe charge a cell phone. This one does have a USB-C. You might be able to charge off, I haven't tried it. Anyway, we have links to all this sort of stuff. It's like the ordinary things that you're gonna use all the time. These things are cheap, they work really well, but if you're using all smart packs, it's a waste of your money, okay? We'll help you find the things that you can get away with not buying here on Brian Phillips RC, and the things that we use on a routine basis. We're gonna help you get there as cheap and effectively and as quick as possible. Yes, the videos are long, but it's gonna be worth it. Trust me. Okay, getting back to the build, we have one problem that I want to address before we start the build. This is not supposed to be at that weird angle. You can tell it looks different, and it is clearly a defect of sorts, okay? I'm just gonna rip this off right now. And as you can see, it looks like a little bit of glue was on there. Maybe it just got set and then they walked away from it. I'm gonna try pressing it just to see what happens. And as you can see, it is basically held on very weak. I'm gonna show you how I will fix it. You don't have to fix it this way, but it is an option. Now, if you're buying this plane from Horizon Hobby through our links in the video description below, which support Brian Phillips RC, you can buy this competitive branded China glue, which is a little bit more clear and a little bit more tacky, or you can buy this foam to foam, branded, name branded. It has warnings on it. This one doesn't. I handwrite my notes on it. This stuff and this stuff are almost the same price. They're both very good. I slightly prefer the cheaper crap. And when I say cheaper, it's cheaper by cents.
Yeah.
Like $6 or $7, and it's slightly less, and this is maybe like $10 is slightly more. Okay, it's about the same price, but one of my complaints with this particular tube is they come pierced. And so eventually, you'll get all this buildup on there. I'm not a big fan of that. I could also resolve that by being a little bit more careful. These ones, you have to cut them yourself when they're new, okay? So for the sake of, this is a Horizon product, we'll use a Horizon offering because you're gonna be getting this plane as a bind and fly more than likely, which means you won't need to buy a receiver separately, but if you wanna buy some of this foam to foam, you can buy that, support the channel and supports you know, these people that we work with. Okay, so this is, and by the way, this is just a really clear version. One thing that we complain about on this particular brand versus the China glue is that it will get that skin of oxidation. You see that? How it's got that like kind of dried amount on the tip. You see? It's dull looking. That should not be dull yet. Okay, watch this. As you spread it out, it's shiny. Okay? It's shiny, but that's gonna go dull in a few seconds. That is what happens when this cooks off chemically. And what I found is that it will sometimes almost not be tacky at first. Now it is tacky when you dyed those two surfaces with glue on them. We don't seem to find that with the competitive offering, which is, this is straight up China glue. By the way, this straight up China glue is exactly what they're using to hold most of your airplane halves together, your wing parts, your servo covers, all that stuff is held by this. They do not use CA. CA is way too expensive, and it's also a lot more brittle. They use CA in certain applications, and then there's other applications like what we talked about where there's that foamy sort of weird glue like this. I would love to get my hands on that stuff, which is like a caulk material, okay? That stuff is awesome. It's really good for mounting receivers in particular. So what do we do when we glue with China glue or a foam to foam? Both are very good, by the way. I would say that there's maybe a 5% differential in effectiveness, in my opinion, if I had to put a number to it. So it's not a big difference, and it's almost exactly the same cost. But look at that. It looks like a dry piece of film, right? Or like you have a plastic bag sitting on top of it. See? It doesn't come off on my finger. But watch this. Watch this. As soon as I put contact adhesive to contact adhesive, it pulls off and it strings. You see the strings? Look at this right here. I'm gonna try to use my face as a backdrop because I know it's bright behind me. You see the stringiness? One of the best things you can do to activate this glue is just pull it apart a few times and look at all those contact areas. It looks like a spider web, okay? Now, you could let that cook off more, but I am totally comfortable with where we're leaving things. You can also wipe that off on your fingers, and then you can roll it up into a boog, and then just let it fall on the ground for your wife to vacuum up later. Okay, so that's gonna be dried and set up and secure in exactly the way we want when we mount it to the wings, okay? Now, the instruction manual shows a bottle of CA in mounting those leading edge. Here, just show the people, you know where they are.
Back at the beginning. Here.
Medium CA. So, we're gonna do something crazy on this channel today, and we're gonna actually use CA instead of the product that we just used. Why? Because I want to prove to you that you don't have to have a foam safe CA to actually do this process. Now, I'm going to bring out 3 bottles and a bottle of what's called Kicker, so I can teach you guys something new here on Brian Phillips RC. We take the opportunity to teach people when we have the opportunity. If you're watching this video saying, I know all this crap, Brian, I don't need a review, this is not a beginner plane. This is pretty much a beginner plane these days. This plane fills many different holes. And one of the biggest holes it could fill is a beginner-esque plane. Why would you fly a Timber 1.5 for a beginner plane? Because it's not that much more than the beginner offerings. It's far more capable, and you could beat the crap out of them, and they keep on ticking, okay? So, this is a brand-specific BSI product. I like BSI, it's what I grew up using, and the tips always seize up every time, drives me up the wall. So what do? I have a Pringles lid that holds my Kicker. Kicker is an activator. You do not have to use an activator, but it makes it faster. This is not a foam safe product, but on EPO, you can use it, okay? This is a foam safe product, same thing from BSI. They have different branding from different manufacturers. Just about everybody in the model space sells a BSI or an alternative choice. I like BSI, it works really well. This is a more thin version. You can see it's like almost like water. This is a more thick version, which is medium, so it's more gap filling. And you can tell it's starting to kind of thicken up on me. This is probably gonna be done, okay? Sucks because this stuff's expensive. But I just can't bring myself to buy the smaller bottles, even because it's like $4 more per ounce or whatever. So this stuff is thin. One thing about thin CA is you can get in and do these hinges that you have to slide in, and then you can wick it in from the side, but you're not gonna build gaps unless you do levels and you build it up, Kicker, build it up, Kicker, build it up, Kicker, but it's gonna be a really wide and messy mess. This stuff is way thicker, but at this particular instance, we can get away with non-foam safe. Now, why do I have this pin like I'm building a balsa wood model? Because that is how I reopen my bottles consistently and all the time. And I hate having to do that. Some people use pins to actually close the bottles. But as you can see, I can now squeeze the bottle, okay? All right, so I'll stick that back into my foam block to keep it. And we are gonna build these first. Why are we building these first? I don't know, just because we can. And I've built this plane so many times that I know that it's going to be slightly easier to do it right now. Am I potentially wrong in my assessment? Sure, maybe, I don't know. This is the left wing. How do I know it's the left wing? Because I can hold it as though I were the pilot in the plane and it's on the left side. This would be the right side, of course. So since this is left, I can grab the left one. It's marked left. And then if I want, again, this is optional, you don't have to install these. I'm gonna grab these little pieces of foam and I'm just gonna use my finger to roll these off just like this. Now I'm gonna show you the trick of the day. These things are glued on, okay? So when I say glued on, it's like a double-sided adhesive tape. It's almost like a weather strip, okay? I'm just gonna stick it here and that's as good as you need to do. Then you can go back and you can put them back on should you decide to take these off. And you're probably thinking, but Brian, how are you gonna take that off if you see it on? Here's the trick of the day. I'm not gonna take them off, okay? But let's say that I need to take them off. You'll be able to break them off, first of all, and then you'll be able to peel these out with minimal damage and consequence. But I will tell you the easier way to do it, if you really want this to be glued on here and you really want to take them off, then what you would do is you would use China glue. China glue. Why?
Because then you could use kicker.
The kicker will debond the China glue. And so you can actually take it off. But since the instructions say to use CA, we're gonna go ahead and use CA this time and just see how it works. Now, the other thing too I've found is that when you use CA on top of another glue agent, sometimes it doesn't work as good. Possibly if you wanna hand me that bottle of kicker. So here's the kicker. This is called Instaset. It's a BSI product, doesn't matter. There's other brands, okay? We're gonna do a dry fit here. How do I know which way this goes? Because it's very obvious when you try to push it together. You can tell where it went. Now, you could use that super foam, super thin foam safe CA, but it's gonna run in and under the wing. I promise you it will. The other thing is don't get so much CA in there that it goes on your wife's counter because she's gonna be pissed. All right, so here's how we're gonna do this. We're gonna do a little bit of glue on the bottom and a little bit of glue on the sides. It doesn't need to be a ton. We're just gonna do a few drips, a little bit on the deepest portion. You see how I just put it on the tip there of the dorsal fin, if you will. And then I'm just gonna do 4 drips. There is nothing magical about 4 drips. This is just what I've chosen to do. It's gonna work fine. And since I'm not using kicker, we'll have plenty of time to get this in. Just keeping in mind, we've already dry fit this product to make sure that it fits. And we're not gonna screw around, we're gonna get to it, okay? So we're gonna stick this in here. Now, if you do get CA on your wife's counter, the first thing to do is to line up your hotel reservations. But the second thing to do is get some acetone, which also is probably gonna come from your wife's cabinet of nail supplies. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna use that acetone to take it off of the counter, okay? This is granite, not quartz, okay? We have quartz in our bathrooms. We built this house 7 years ago, roughly, and a lot of people were like, well, why didn't you use quartz? Because I want to be able to put hot stuff down and not burn it. And I like quartz too. We have quartz counters and they're beautiful, but granite is really hard and it's a little bit more resilient to the types of things that we do, which is put screws down and then try to find them in this tiger pattern.
We couldn't find a screw colored quartz.
We looked really hard.
We tried.
Okay, so you'll notice that all the joints are very tight. You can see that it's held on there. And if I wanted to take that off right now, it would probably not come off, okay? Very easy, very fast. Not like you remember when you were a kid using CA, okay? But if you want it to go even faster, you can use kicker. Now, I'm highly tempted to show them what we would do with China glue, but then I'm like, nah, we're just gonna do this time. If you wanna know what it's like to use China glue for this, you've already seen our repair on that very piece. It's gonna be exactly the same. The only difference is if I really wanted the best results, I'd probably lean toward this, especially on a flexible joint like this where you're gonna see lots of movement. And believe me, every time you pick this plane up, you're gonna bump these things. Just get ready for it, okay?
Yes.
All right, so the next step is exactly the same as the first. By the way, if you haven't noticed, we went from our unbox and elaboration about batteries straight into the build. This is what we do on Brian Phillips RC. We've been doing this for 10 years. We've done thousands of videos. Thousands of videos, okay? So this is not our first rodeo, and we know what's important to most people. We also know what we're doing to build these planes, despite what it may look. So when you see us struggling and waffling, it's because there are genuine concerns, complexities, and weirdities about each and every model that we've ever built, okay? Sometimes the model companies will say, this is a 15-minute build, and then you know they're lying,
Yes.
okay? There is no such thing. In fact, the quickest builds we've ever had might have been about 15 minutes, and they are very quick, but that is a rarity. Now, film yourself doing anything, and you'll notice it takes longer, okay? So just keep in mind, we are trying to teach people that might know a little bit less than you. So give us a break and help people get into the hobby. What's the best thing you can do to get people in the hobby? Support them in their entry level experience, because once you get into the hobby, you can self-soothe on a lot of these questions, okay? Now, if you're looking for help, you're in the right place. On BrianPhillipsRC.com, you'll be able to find competitive offerings, whether it's from Horizon or one of our other partners that we work with. We work with pretty much all of them, okay? Not all of them, because there's a few that kind of have their heads up their butts, but that's okay. Maybe they'll come around someday. We're not holding our breath. We really like Horizon product. It's an American company buying Chinese product that's sold to Americans and all sorts of other people around the world. And so for those of you that have been out of shape, that China makes these things, China makes a lot of things. I work in manufacturing professionally as an industrial scale technician. I've been doing that for 20 years. I go into production plants. I see and feel the pain and suffering of outsourcing, but there are certain things that China does really well. And then there's certain things that they don't do well. This is one of the things they do a pretty good job of. I'm not saying that we couldn't do this in America, but if we could, then why is it that the manufacturing plants that are 45 minutes from my house never wants to work with us? Explain to me that. These are also the same companies that have moved their headquarters a few hours away and have barely avoided bankruptcy multiple times. Maybe that should tell you something about the world economy. Okay, so at the end of the day, we love products that are well executed and truthful to their customers. We want people to be able to buy good quality products at an affordable price, and that is difficult these days because everything has gotten really expensive. But not just planes, by the way, in case you haven't noticed. Okay, so those are glued in, and I felt like I almost missed the boat. If you heard that pop, it's because I had not got full deep penetration, and you do need to get full and deep penetration. It's one of our rules of thumb here on Brian Phillips RC. Penetrate deep, full deep penetration is necessary for best results. That being said, we're gonna go ahead and put away CA. Hopefully that answers your questions about some of these things. Now, there also are pink caps of this, which is a thick, and then there are blue, which is thin, but also not foam safe. These are foam safe medium. I don't know that they make a thick in foam safe. Foam safe, also known as low odor, is more expensive than not foam safe by a factor of sometimes 2 to 2.5 times more. It's kind of a ripoff, but I digress. Here's the thing. If it's more expensive and it doesn't melt your model, you're gonna like the way it works.
Yeah.
Here's the catch. When you use kicker and low odor, it will increase the speed of chemical reactivity and sometimes melt foam anyway. But if you're working on an ultra micro, show them an ultra micro over there, that red and white, plain, the yellow and black, both of those will melt if you use this purple tipped glue. I promise you they will, because that's an EPS and that's a different type of foam. So just keep in mind, if you know the foam you're working with, you can get lucky. Now, there are obviously other types of glues, and there's a million of them. And I'm not saying they're a dime a dozen, by the way. We have worked through a lot of different glues over the years. Most of my glue bottles are 90% full when they go bad, and it breaks my heart. If you're anything like me, and by the way, don't tell me to put it in the fridge. I've been doing that for centuries, and it's never seemed to help. All it does is further piss off my wife about this hobby, okay? Because if there's nothing that invigorates a woman, it's looking into a fridge that's already full of things, not having enough room, and then finding your stupid glue.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
So my suggestion is don't do that thing. Now that may be a personal caveat, but even still. Okay, that being said, we're gonna go ahead and start cramming rods. So the build on this plane will take less time than it did for our elaborate experience with those leading edge slats. You may notice that many other people that do reviews will leave off features like that because they don't care. Well, here on Brian Phillips RC, we don't care how long it takes, obviously.
You notice.
So cram the black rod in and then stuff it in both sides. Camera crew, would you hold that, please?
Yes.
Thank you. There is a reinforcement member here. It's made of plastic, which is really nice, and that's gonna help keep everything nice and sturdy. There is a little bit of a dihedral in this wing. Of course, I'm trying to grab this. That's one thing about the leading edge slats, is it makes it hard to hold the wing.
Yeah.
Okay, I warned you about that, and now you know, okay? Now, is that a deal breaker? Absolutely not for me at least. Maybe it is for you. Okay, so this is the little plastic piece that goes in here. You'll notice there's an angle to it. If you kind of put this flat on this plane that would be here, like at the bottom of that cylinder that goes down to the smaller cylinder, that's your flat plane. You can tell it goes uphill. So it's gonna go uphill. and you can stuff this in. If it doesn't fit right, you did it backward, okay? Now, there's 2 plastic wing mount screws, okay, just like that. Got lots of threads, and these are gonna eventually pass through there, so I just like to drop those in. You'll notice that the plane is getting dangerously close to being built. We're gonna cram one more rod in, and then we're gonna put this wing on. We're gonna put a couple screws to hold it. And you're probably thinking to yourself, Brian, you didn't even look at the manual once. Technically, I did this time, okay? So right here, how do I know which direction is which? It is a little bit confusing on this plane because the elevator is bigger than the stabilizer. So just remember, there are times when an entire tailplane moves, and there's times when an elevator moves, and there's times when a more conventional sized elevator moves, right? You gotta be able to figure it out, okay? So this is gonna go like that. How do I know what up is? Look close, you'll see a control horn. This control horn is built into the plastic. This plastic is strong. It bridges the gap between the surfaces, and then the plastic also reinforces the mount point onto the fuselage, okay? So we're gonna go ahead and go like this. We're gonna slide this on. Look how good of a fit it is. I will tell you one small bit of truth, just so you don't think we're trying to mislead. These things slide in easier the second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth times than they do the first time. So yours might have a little bit more resistance. And remember, this is a product development sample. Now, you may have noticed I missed something.
Yeah, was that
I need to
intentional?
cram the rod in.
Okay.
Okay?
You don't usually
So
forget
this
that part.
rod, yeah, I know, it's usually one of the first things I do. So it's straight through and in, and then this is gonna go in. Now, if you were gonna use those counterweights, then they would slide in now. So I'll just show you what it would look like, but I am gonna pull it right back out because I don't believe we're gonna need it, and I don't mind having a little bit more overstable plane. I can try to slide the battery back if I wanna do that, or I can just take this off. It's very easy to take it off, okay? So this goes right here. If you're gonna do it, you'd be doing both sides more than likely. Do not do one side or the other, do both. Do both or neither. Okay, so that obviously didn't work. So where does the pocket go? Oh, the pocket goes, does it go in there? No? How does that work?
I don't know. I don't see a pocket.
I don't see the pocket they're talking about either, and that's why I'm so weirded out by this.
Oh, it's underneath.
Oh, it's underneath. Gosh, I feel like an idiot now. Okay, so as usual here on Brian Phillips RC, after we figure out what we did wrong, we tell you about it. But we got to screw that on so it doesn't fall off. So let's show you where the weights would go here. Boop. Okay, so my apologies, guys. I genuinely thought they went in the wing. Okay, you ready?
Yep.
Now, we can add that later, which is nice. I don't have to
Yeah, that's
disassemble
easy.
anything. I didn't think that was gonna be the case, but this is pretty awesome. So if our CG works out poorly, we'll have this ready. We'll show you how to test the CG after the build's done, and we'll actually have batteries to use. Because look at this. Remember how we were talking about the milliamp hours? Mm-hmm. That is 1111 milliamp hours, or 1.111 amp hours that was forced into this particular battery, okay? And then on this particular battery is 1.163 amp hours, or 1163 milliamp hours forced into this. So if we were to fly these packs back to back, let's say we flew for 10 minutes each or something. I have no idea how long this plane's gonna fly, full disclosure. And we brought them in and we put them on the charger and we kept track of which one's which. The first one was a 10-minute flight, the second one was a 12-minute flight. Then you would expect to put more power into the one that had the 12-minute flight. But it depends on how you flew. That's one of the biggest problems. When you're a beginner, you're gonna tend to be in the throttle all the time. And when you're a more experienced pilot, you might be able to fly twice as long on the same power. It's about efficiency and flying the plane with a little bit more skill. Or you're like me and you just fly them until they run out of power and fall out of the sky. Mm-hmm. So this battery might take in 3,200 milliamp hours. Sometimes you'll squeeze 3,800 milliamp hours into a battery this size. That usually tells you you flew it too long, okay? So you can glean all sorts of new information to act upon for future reference. Okay, so now that we know where those counterweights go, we need to go ahead and put those screws in before we forget. We have a handful of screw bags over here. You want to look at those screw bags and see if you can guess. I'm going to grab my screwdriver set.
Should be 2 self-tapping screws.
And yeah, so I bet you it's this one.
I bet it's those.
It might be these though. It's kind of hard to tell.
But where do those little nut things go?
No, the washers?
Yeah.
Yeah, there isn't. So it's a 2.5 by 12. So if in doubt, guys, if you don't know, they used to label these bags for us, okay? That was a good time in history, okay?
Yep.
Look, can you, look at this. We're gonna open this up, okay? We're gonna close it, make sure it's at 0, and we're in millimeters. So we're looking for a 2.5 by 12, so 12. So let's go to 12. There's 12 right there. 12, 12, 12, 13. Yeah, that's part of the problem here. So which one looks the most alike? It says self-tapping screws, B. So if we had a B label, then we could go with it. This is a self-tapping. If you measure the actual screw, now it's not this one, we know that. That's probably for the floats.
Yep.
Okay, that's gonna go into those little things on the bottom of the rudder, which we pointed out earlier. So we know we're not gonna need this. They go into this right there. And then they create a trap point to hold onto those ropes that go on the floats. Okay, so we'll keep these in a bag of goodies that will be saved for this very purpose later, because we're not putting the floats on now. We're gonna also put these in that same bag, okay? And then these are probably the ones we want. Why do I believe these are the ones we want? First of all, they are technically, might be self-tapping, but if you measure from the shaft to the head, you're at about 12 millimeters. The problem is these are not self-tapping. They are machine screws, so we can roll those out.
Yep.
And then the next problem is these are also a self-tapping, but they have washers, okay? Now, because there's washers, that's gonna give us a clue as to which one we're dealing with. Okay, so let's measure the shaft length. That is shorter, that's like a 10, so this is not it, okay? So we know which ones they are now by process of elimination. Those are quite a bit longer. And these are 12, and they are technically self-tapping, but it's sort of the, you know, the cheapy kind. Sometimes they have more of like a weird angular slice on the bottom. Okay, so we'll turn off the calipers so we can come back to this. These are Phillips screws. We prefer hex drive screws. They're a lot easier to drive, but we'll take what we can get.
And there's
4 millimeters. Very good fit on this 4 millimeter. This would be about a 1.5, a Phillips 1.5.
Yep.
Okay. And there's two what?
There's 2 screws, and that's what we need. We haven't been getting
But because this is a
extra
PD
screws.
sample, sometimes some brands still give us 1 extra of each component style.
Yep.
Except for a lot of times the spinner has a really long screw, and so we will only get 1 of those. Okay. So hold that on with the tip of your finger, and then do you go from the top or the bottom?
From the top.
You go from the top, which is just always kind of a weird one because it's like, is that really going through? And then look how high I am. It gets really close to hitting the rudder, okay? Okay, easy peasy. Now come around here, I wanna show you something. Look at this gap. You see the gap there? I'm gonna hold this vertical stabilizer, not the rudder, the vertical stabilizer, and I'm gonna press and just make sure that doesn't close. It does not close. So in that event, we're gonna assume it is all the way in to the pocket and we have full, deep, satisfying penetration. Now, how do we know that worked? Look on the bottom. You see the screw coming through, and remember there was 2 little tabs that went in there. Pull on the wing, it doesn't come out. We have found victory.
Okay.
But we don't have the control surface hooked up yet. How are we gonna do that?
Are we gonna do that now?
Yeah,
Okay.
We're gonna do it now. Why? Because it's easy to miss on this plane, because it's hard to see, and that's a good thing, okay? So this is wiggling and waggling all over the place. So we have 3 holes. Look, 1, 2, 3, and then we have this thing that we have to hook up to it. Crap, how do we know which one to stick it in?
Well, you don't
Not
wanna put
guess and check.
You wanna put it in the
I've
wrong
learned that
one.
is wrong.
Yes.
We look in this book of delightful information called the
That you
manual.
mostly ignore.
It's in the outside hole. Now, I'm gonna tell you something right now about Brian Phillips RC. I have had many timbers. If there is a time where you would stick it in the wrong hole, this might be it. On that outside most hole, you're gonna get the least deflection. On the middle hole, you're gonna get slightly more. And on the innermost hole, you're gonna get the maximum deflection. So depending on your flying style, you may wanna stick it in a different hole. But just make sure you get blessing first, okay? So the blessing comes from practice, right?
Sure.
What you wanna do is, I'm gonna use forceps. And the reason I'm using forceps and not pliers is because this gets into tight spots and I'm using the straight ones. I almost never use the straight ones, usually the bent ones. Okay, and I'm gonna hold this. Why do I wanna do that? So that it doesn't bend. Because I don't want this to bend when I try to pop this off. I'm gonna pop it off right now by pushing down, and you see it just pulls right out. Super easy peasy. And then look how close I am. Why did I not use needle nose pliers, hon? So by the way, if you ever get these forceps and they do this little bendy trick on you, where they bend like that, see how they bend? It's because when you're right-handed or left-handed, that usually speaks to crappy quality forceps. You see that gap there? You can also take and just open them and bend them back. But you gotta bend them from all the way down at this contact point. And you can get those things to line up. I'm just not gonna play with it right now. Okay, so look, we'll grab right here, and then I'm gonna push it back, and just gonna walk it in the hole. Now, you don't have to use forceps to do that. Just full disclosure, it's a little bit easier. Okay. Now,
So you are gonna stick with the outside hole for now?
I'm sticking the outside hole.
Okay.
Yep. And then I'm gonna take and I'm gonna put some pressure on the backside. I'm gonna slide this over, and then look where it's gonna go. It's gonna drop downward, okay? Downward meaning it's just kind of an awkward spot. Not a lot of room to play with. See what I'm struggling with? Because my camera crew is standing where I need to be. Go over here, please.
Switch.
I'm right-handed, so this makes a lot easier sense over here. So now I can hold that so it doesn't push through. And I can press against it, get it started, roll it under, and then snap it back down, or in this case, up. Okay? So then that's snapped on. And they just work really dang good. Now, normally, we wouldn't connect that yet. Why do we do it now? Because here's the thing, and the other thing too is you'll want to cover this up if you don't use your counterweights. If you do use your counterweights, then you'll definitely cover it up, okay? The reason you can do that now is because look where our adjustment's going to be.
Oh, right.
Yeah, but guess what? Your wing is going to be on at that point. So you know what we're going to do? We're going to be smart fellers and not fart smellers. And we're going to do the wing last, okay?
Okay.
That's why we built the wing, and it's prepared to install, but it's not going to install until such a time as we're ready to install it. So this is just gonna sit over here and just look beautiful. By the way, look at that, 1.5 meters and a little bit of dihedral. Looks beautiful, and a little wing droop on the edge there, beautiful. All right, so when you put together a plane like this, you gotta eventually do the landing gear. We like to do the landing gear while we're doing the fuse. It makes it a little bit easier, okay? So let's look at this together. Obviously, we need screws to put this together. What would you think the screws are gonna look like on this?
Machine screws?
Yep, and that's, why do we know that? Because we've built these a bunch of times. And it's because it's going through a piece of metal and it's holding into another piece of metal. That's what we need there. And then these are going to be held on with an extra washer. No, that's wrong, too small. They're gonna go on with this. How do we know? Because we just so happen to have done this many times.
Do you want me to bring both of those bags?
Yeah, if you don't mind. Okay. Okay, so we've got this little apparatus here that has a swivel designed into it, okay? This is incidentally gonna come off if you put your floats on, 2 screws come out, then it comes out, you slide your wires in there. And same thing here, you got wires that go down and then there's little clips that go in to secure it. Guess what those are gonna be secured by?
Ooh, those washers.
Yep. So, process of elimination is the name of the game in most of these assemblies. It sucks that that is the reality. It would be probably beneficial if we could get back to a place where they would say, go to the B bag and go to the C bag and go to the D bag. There you go. Now that stuff is ready to go back when and if we decide to put floats on. Also, we have a piece of Velcro and we have a bind plug. We'll leave the bind plug for another plane. You know why? Because we don't need the bind plug accessible like that. So we'll just put it in our pile of bind plugs. Because we're gonna have our wing off so we can very easily press the bind button. The bind button, of course, being right here. Okay? Full disclosure. Here, clicking. When they first came out with the bind button, I thought that was the stupidest idea ever, which is exactly the way I felt about smart batteries.
You did?
Yeah.
Why?
Because the bind button, I didn't know at the time. I thought people were gonna end up bumping that button. First of all, it's harder to press than I thought. And second of all, it only works at the very beginning of the process. If you're already flying, it's not the same, okay? So I've never had a problem with it, ever. And we've done tons of planes.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna do the prop next.
But
I'm
we're
gonna get
doing
this
the
out of
landing
way.
gear.
I know. I just need stuff out of the way, okay? So this apparatus is half round, and you don't want to mount to that side. You want to mount to the flat side. See how that spins free? That is going to allow the landing gear to splay, which is pretty awesome, okay? So there's a left side and a right side, and it's going to go something like this, and then it's going to go something like that. See how that works? Pretty simple. So you're going to have to screw into that first, and this holds itself up if you're careful. That is a lot easier than I remember it being. I think they must have improved some things. Okay, look at this. We got a bag. We're gonna dump these out onto this table. Watch how much they don't blend in. Yep, they're gone. We'll never find them.
Perfect.
That's why we picked this granite. It's like we could leave the build out for weeks and never even know there was a plane there. Because holding it with my finger, this is an awkward step. Once you get it started, you're good to go. Okay, now I'm not gonna finish that. I'm gonna get the second one ready. And then this little clip doohickey gets in the way every time. Okay, so I'm gonna walk this until it goes. And then it goes. I'm using that 4mm, which would be a Phillips 1.5. You might be able to get away with a Phillips 2, but I don't know. One's gonna be a little bit too small. So then I'm gonna come back here, torque this down. Now, this is metal on metal with metal. You could technically Loctite this. You don't need to. Just don't worry about it. Okay, torque it down like crazy and you should be golden. That'll stretch the threads and hold it tight. Okay, do not put Loctite here. You will fail. Plastic will fail. Okay, Loctite is not your friend on radio controlled airplanes, with the exception of occasionally motor mounts and occasionally on carbon fiber or wood planes. Try to keep away from the solvents that act as carriers in Loctite. Will cause this plastic to get soft or brittle or both, and it will break it. It acts like a solvent and it breaks it down. Ask me how I know. All right, so screw through. That makes a little standoff, and then this gets held in that position, right like that. Pretty simple stuff. And then that takes the slop and play out of it, which is pretty awesome. So I'm gonna go back in with a 4mm screw, and I could probably get away with a 5 on this, which is exactly what I'm gonna do, but I'll have to go back to the 4 when I put the other one on. This might be a bad idea to do this first. See, I'm pulling that over so that it kind of self-centers. Booyah. That is a very, very sharp setup. That works very good, very strong, resilient spring. Look at that. It's strong and resilient, but it's still got flex. That's really nice. I do not remember it being that simple.
I don't either.
I kind of remember it being a huge pain in the butt.
It's been a while.
It's been a long time.
We've installed a lot of landing gear.
Yeah, I know. And that's the trouble, is it is difficult to keep everything straight. Okay, so slide this. Now, if you try to put this from the top, it won't go. You have to go in from the side under those little clip doohickeys. Get a couple of threads started, let go get the other screw. Like I said, since this is metal on metal on metal, if you were gonna apply Loctite, you'd put a little drip on there and then you would feed it through, but just be careful to not get it all over your plastic. And if you do, wipe it off right away and you'll be fine. But I still don't think it's necessary, and so I wouldn't recommend it, okay? And that is coming from somebody who has done this many times, okay? All right, so torquing that down and then torquing this down. By the way, thanks for being here with us on Brian Phillips RC. If you guys want more content about different planes, you can check out brianphillipsrc.com. That is our website and domain. You can also go to bprc.com And basically what's going to happen is you will be prompted to make a decision on how you want to sort. And there's things like supplies that you can buy there to help support Brian Phillips RC and obviously support your own pursuit in the hobby. But just keep in mind, at the end of the day, we love this hobby. We know that there's millions of ways you can support us. The biggest is watching the videos, smashing the like button, clicking the bell for notifications when you do subscribe, which many of you will, and we appreciate you doing that. But then if you want to support us financially, you can buy the planes from the link. You can buy the batteries, transmitters, chargers, things that we recommend and things that you love. But if you don't like them, don't get them. Get something you do like. If you ever find something on Brian Phillips RC, we don't like it, don't get that. Get something good, okay? We want you guys to have the maximize your RC budget for the maximum impact in your own world, exactly where you are in your progression in the hobby. Because at the end of the day, not everybody is at the same place. Okay, so we're gonna put this spinner on last to take this nut off. Okay, then this is just a little spacer / washer. Okay, then the prop is gonna go on. It's gonna get a little pressure up against those grooves, and you can see that this one's got like light grooves on it. Okay, so that's gonna help to hold the prop, but then once the friction from this tightening on is gonna also help to get it tighter. Now keep in mind, in the modern era of RC aircraft, we have thrust reverse, and that's really good when you're using a float equipped plane, but it's also really bad when you've got a prop that can actually walk itself back off of the plane, okay? So just keep in mind when you're making decisions about how you want to manage thrust reverse or not, keep in mind that you're gonna need to torque these down good, okay? So how do you do that? Get in here with a crescent wrench or a sizable wrench and spin that. Once it gets set, you can go in here, get an angle from here so they can see that not spinning, okay? You wanna see that thing not spin, okay? Torque it down, get on there again, torque it down. Now look, I'm holding this in such a way that it doesn't cut me by putting a lot of surface area on that prop. There are times, if you were to do that on the right plane, you would get cut like a knife. You gotta use your best judgment. Some blades are sharper than others for the same exact model. It just depends on how they milled them and how they balanced when they were balancing the props, if they did balance them. It's the other thing you'll find. You get a higher quality prop, they're gonna cost more, they're gonna be more reliable, and they're gonna be more likely to come out of the package balanced than if you get some cheap junk. And believe me, I got the cheap junk. I got thousands of them. Guess what? They don't get used. Or you use them once and then you got to sit there and dink around with them before you can even mount them on a plane. That is actually going on. Just very, very slow.
Yeah.
That's annoying. Is it?
It is, yeah.
Is it? Yeah. I think it is.
It is.
No way. I just can't tell. No, I don't think it's going. Now it's Preston. My apologies, folks. Now it's going. Okay, back to the 4mm drive. Just in case you're wondering, 4mm is not normally the way we distinguish Phillips size tips, but when you get them from China, that's the way they do it. Right?
Yep, apparently so.
All right, so we're gonna need one more screwdriver to put the big, I'll get the 6mm one, just a little bit bigger, for the nylon screws for the wing joiners. Now it'd be nice if there was a quick release on here, but honestly, we've never really had a problem with this. It's not for us. We don't take our wings off every time, but I do need to warn you, this is a big plane and the tail on a timber is big for a 1.5 meter plane. So just keep in mind, if you have to tuck this into a small plane, you can easily take off the wing and you can easily load it into a car. But you have to keep in mind that that tail section is big, considerably bigger than some other offerings in a similar size class. And look how tall this is. Look at that. I have a fist. It just ran into my fingers. Look, up on plane there. Look how steep you got to be before you have a prop stripe. Look at this. If you're doing a takeoff or landing in the grass, Plus, this is so far forward of the center of gravity. It's very good, excuse me. So then, also, when you come in for a rough landing, you got lots of movement and play and slop there, which is super, super nice. Should be done with the robot plane stand. By the way, something like this goes for 25, 30 bucks, and you will use it forever. So definitely a good idea if you get into building these models. It'll be a back saver for a lot of you guys. And if you're anything like me, you need all the back saving you can get. All right, so we have this plane essentially to the point where we're ready to be done building it. We could check the CG, but we're not gonna do that because the wing is off. The reason the wing's off is because I wanna start with radio setup now before we actually continue the next step. Now, you don't need an NX8 to do this. You could do this with a DX, an older DX. You could do it with an NX10. You could do it with an IX20. You could do it with an IX12, IX, whatever you got. You could do an NX20. You could also do the NX7E, which is the economy version. It's white in color. My suggestion, if you're looking to get into the middle of the road, something that's gonna do all the stuff you wanna do and not cut a bunch of corners, get this one, the NX8, and get the bigger 6,600 milliamp hour transmitter pack. It's gonna last a long time for you. It's gonna be a very good fit for almost all your needs. I can tell you personally that this has been a really good transmitter for me. And we have hundreds, if not thousands of aircraft. And I can tell you it is probably my go-to right now. NX8 Plus is just a symptom of firmware. If you have an old NX8, it does not matter. You can update the firmware. This is a 20-channel transmitter. We have a 6-channel receiver that is more like a 20 because there are unpluggable channels, and there's also full transmitter telemetry back and forth, especially because of the serial data that's carried from the Avian ESC, which of course is mounted kind of up and underneath the bottom of this area here. You can see it right there, Avian. I think it's an Avian Light, but it's right back there where my finger was, okay? So Avian ESCs have communication back and forth through the smart receiver, which is really nice. So remember, this is a transceiver. It's actually a transmitter and a receiver, and this is a transceiver, but we call this the transmitter and we call this the receiver, okay? This is an AR631 Plus, which is the newer version. If you have an AR631, you can update the firmware, except for on the very, very, very oldest ones, you may not be able to update. But what you'll do is you'll factory reset these, and then you can update to the latest and greatest firmware. If you don't know how to do that, watch one of our plug and fly planes, and we will very rarely, but occasionally do firmware updates. You almost never need to do it to fly, but you might need to do it to support a certain newer feature. Also, this will pull the model file from this plane when we're binding, if you want to do that. However, this is an incredibly simple model, and I am going to show you how to set it up start to finish, because I feel like that undermines what we do on this channel to a certain extent, to just pull the file out. Now, if it was a helicopter, like, you know, that 230, then I would pull the helicopter file out because they're a pain in the butt to set up. There's a lot of features that got to get set up, and it takes a long time, okay? And that's coming from me doing this video. You'll notice it's not short. When you bind to this and you take advantage of the preloaded transmitter file, there's nothing wrong with that. But I will tell you this, we're gonna set ours up better. And it's not that hard. I'll teach you how to do it. I like doing that because I want you guys to know how to use the equipment and not necessarily to undermine the performance of that bind and fly file. Now, if you're going to follow along in your manual, this is where, this is, by the way, if you're looking for the plane, you want to buy it from the links in the video description below, or just follow the links and you can scroll down and find the manual. This is where it talks about the transmitter requirements, battery requirements, chargers, and receivers. In this case, it's a bind and fly, so it comes with that. This is a smart transmitter file. By the way, you can download those and have those on your transmitter prior to actually installing them, if you didn't already know that. That's something new. And I just installed version on this NX8 Plus because I've been sitting waiting for us to run out of model memory on the NX10 for like a year. This is upgraded to 4.2.15 or 16, whatever it is. So we just did that, so it is the latest and greatest right now. By the time you're seeing this video, that may have been kicked up a notch. There's gonna be some new, really cool port mapping tools that we'll talk about, but not in this video, okay? So if you want to pull that, as soon as you bind, it'll prompt you on the screen with this, or you can just go ahead and not do it by hitting skip. We'll show that process. And then what we're going to do is we're going to look on page 5. We've got some telemetry settings that we'll have to do manually, which is very easy. It's like one step. And then we have these steps if you want to do the factory setup, which we are not going to do. There's also audio events that are going to be built into their transmitter setup. And that's one of the reasons why I'm not using it, because I don't like their audio events. There's too many of them, and they set up their flight modes different than I like to set them up. And that's not to say that there's anything wrong per se with the way they're setting it up. It's just I do it different. 3200 4S is going to get installed. Now, let's talk about safety for a quick second before we continue. Obviously, this plane has a prop on it, and you're probably thinking to yourself, if you really wanted to be safe, Brian, you wouldn't have that prop installed. And that's a fair argument, but I'm going to disagree because I am going to be using throttle cut, and I'm going to show you how to set this up so that you can keep your hand out of the prop area. And I've never had to do this, but I could sit here and hold this for 10 minutes if I had to, okay? Now, of course, there's gonna be other ways we can unplug the battery. I do have a helper, obviously a camera crew in this case. If you're alone, you may not have that peace of mind, so you might wanna leave the prop off. It's your call, be safe, do your best. Don't send me pictures of your arm chopped up in the hospital. People have done that, I don't wanna see it. Please be careful, guys. That's 2 ways people get hurt in this hobby, props and batteries. Don't be that guy, okay? I've done this so much, and I have cut myself one time with a prop, and it was on an Aero Commander Ultra Micro. I was installing a second receiver so I could add flaps. It was an awesome feature. It worked great. It was awesome. That thing should have had flaps from the beginning. It was so cool. But I was screwing around with trying to calibrate the throttle outputs, and I ended up having a small prop start, and I got a tiny little nick on my hand. Some guys have had a lot worse. All right, that being said, we're gonna get ready to set this up. All right, so we gotta plug into this, and then eventually we'll have to bind, but we do not need this bind plug, okay? So this bind plug, I like that cable, and I like it a lot more than having access to that. It's a little bit tempting to just pull that out, but since we're not sure how things are gonna go, maybe when we add floats, we're gonna wanna be able to rebind to a new transmitter. So we'll go ahead and leave it in there, okay? So this battery needs to go into this somehow. And there's a couple of different ways you can look at this. First of all, this battery will go all the way back, and guess what it's gonna eventually hit? It's gonna eventually hit the lead that comes out from the ESC. That's the last thing it's gonna hit. It's not gonna hit all this other crap, hopefully, but you can't stop it from necessarily hitting that. So what I'd like to do is I'd like all this crap to actually be up on top so it's out of the way, like that. That's a little light controller module. Looks like they stole that from channel 5, must not be doing anything there. Or it's just passing through that. Yeah, just passing through, it looks like. Nope, those are lights. Those are lights, and those are lights. Yeah. So they just stole power from channel 5. You could actually Y off of any channel and steal power from that because the power is parallel across that bus there, okay? Now also you can see there's an orange cable. This is not a thrust reverse plug. That's a programming plug on an Avian ESC, but we'll show you how to set up thrust reverse if it's available, and we'll know that here shortly. So I'm actually gonna tuck this stuff into the wing here, or not the wing, but this little hole next to where the wing would be, just to get this crap out of the way because I don't wanna chase it and I don't want it to cause a problem, and then it'll be out of the way and I can move on, okay? Then this is more or less okay, but you can see it's kind of going under there. So I'm gonna just tuck this off to the side, and I'm gonna go ahead and just see if I can untuck that. It's actually fine where it is. It's not gonna cause any problem. That is incidentally plugged in on port 2. So, excuse me, port 1 is throttle, and then port 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are plugged in as you can see here. This one is plugged into 5, which is a little bit weird that we have 5 plugged in with lights. Normally you would plug that into like a bind plug or whatever, but you remember how I talked about port mapping? There is some features coming where we're gonna be able to use that as an additional pluggable channel, which is kind of a big deal because that 6 channel becomes a 7 channel. Interesting, but you have to be using an Avian ESC, and we'll get into that in a later video where we have time. Okay, so we're gonna slide this in, and it's gonna go just like this, guys. Okay. I'm gonna undo this. By the way, on Brian Phillips RC, we like to show the entire process start to finish. And that is by no mistake. We want people to have the help they need doing this. This is gonna open up, and then you're gonna have this pocket where you can put your battery. Now, one thing we don't like about loading batteries is that they slip and slide on plastic. This slips and slides really easy. And so one of the things we've done in the past is a lot of times people will use Velcro to hold their batteries. I hate Velcro on my packs. It always blocks, it obstructs whatever it says on here or on here. And then I have all sorts of grief with having fatter and wider and more insulated or less insulated packs, or you get the wrong type of Velcro, or you get the hook and loop. You put the hook on the one and you put the hook on the other, and then you can't hook them together, or you get the loop on the one and you got the loop on the other, and you just don't get it right, okay? It's very annoying to me. So we've come up with solutions that work really good, and it's called shelf liner. No, this was not an original idea, but I've been doing it for years. There was a gap where we didn't do it for a long time, and then we kind of came back to it. I'm gonna demonstrate a little China glue this time instead of the foam to foam on this step. You guys can see that. Okay, so this is just run of the mill. It just happens to be solid instead of having little holes in it, okay? And then when my kids put the decorations up there, looks like it fell down on there. See those little pieces of green? Thanks, kids. All right, so I want that thing to sit on here. 1, 2, 3, 4 small contact areas is really all we're gonna need on this. I'm gonna try to do this in a little bit different way than we would normally do. You would normally just stick it back there, but I wanna just cover the contact areas so that we don't undermine the performance of the strap passing, okay? Okay. Because if we glue the strap, it's gonna be really hard to secure the pack, okay? So yes, this is a little bit of an annoying step because it would be kind of nice to not have to do this. You wouldn't have to do this, but I'm gonna want to do it. And you will too. All right, so I cut that to length and it's too long, so I'm gonna just shorten it up. This stuff is so cheap, you could waste half of it, it would still be a very good value. And this is super easy to do. So I'm gonna take the China glue this time. You'll notice that this stuff is quite sticky. And so we'll just poke a little bit of that out and just a tiny, I mean, it doesn't take hardly any to do what we're doing here, see? And then I'll just take this, and then that doesn't get on the strap, hypothetically. And we'll pass it down in there and just stick it down to the plastic, and we'll just let that be there. Now, you wouldn't even technically have to glue it because that is going to stop this thing from slipping and sliding by creating resistance that's enough while you've got a little bit of Velcro holding it down, okay? So now this one we don't have to cut, it's a lot easier, so we'll just go ahead and do that one a little bit wider so we get a little bit more purchase on the battery. But remember, this is only as good as the backing that it sits on, okay? So this is on these plastic straps. And the reason I'm cutting these gaps is because some people have trouble with overheating on some of the timbers. Now, we never had problems, but it's kind of a cooler climate here. And we're not like in mountains or at altitude or whatever. I think we're at about 1,000 feet where we are, just under, above sea level. Okay, so then this one has the same kind of dilemma as before. So we'll be careful to only glue on the outside edges. You can see just a little bit there and just a little bit there. Now you could use that foam to foam, but I just want to demonstrate 3 different types of glues for you on this video. BrianPhillipsRC.com/supplies, or you can just find the tab at the top if you head to bprc.me, whatever's easier for you. If you don't know how to spell my name, bprc.me, and then go to the supplies tab. Very easy to find this stuff, and you'll help support the channel when you buy what you were gonna already buy anyway. They'll just know that we sent you there by following those links, and then they will send small commissions to us to help keep us funded, which is kind of nice. So look, we've got this is actually a little bit wider, and for that reason, I'm gonna go with a little bit bigger. I don't even know that we'll get all the way that far back. So we'll just do a little bit of glue here and a little bit of glue here so we can avoid that strap, okay? And avoiding the strap is kind of a big deal because if you ever have fought to put a battery in a plane that has an obnoxiously located battery strap, particularly a battery strap that doesn't slide, it's very annoying, okay? So let me use this forcep here to get way back in there. The only reason I care is because I've got glue on there and I don't want to get the glue everywhere. Okay, so we'll just drop that down in there. Now this process, again, this is totally optional. It's very easy and it's very inexpensive to do, okay? and it's going to bring you a lot of value. Certainly don't have to do it at all, but it is going to work, and it's going to work wonders. Now, if you don't have access to the China glue or to the foam to foam, you can also just take this off and use it like a double-sided tape and just run that right along that section, pull the other half off and stick this on there, stick it down, cut it off, put that in there, you're done. And then if somebody has a Velcro already on their pack, you can use the Velcro that was on their pack to stick that battery in. But I found that nobody in the history of time has ever put the Velcro on the same spot ever in the history of time, like I said. So that will never work. Because if you go to a flight field, it's like trying to get people to agree on the same switch to run flaps or the same switch to run gear and things like that. That's part of the reasons why I'm teaching you how to set this up from the get-go instead of pulling the receiver file, because many of you are going to want to change things. There's nothing wrong with that. You can still reassign different switches, and it's really not that hard. But I find it much easier to just start from scratch. So if you're anything like me, we're going to do all those things right now. The other thing too is keep in mind, just because we go into a lot of detail doesn't mean you have to do all these steps every time you watch a Brian Phillips RC video. So if you're like a normal person and one of our normal audience, you'll be jumping around. Don't feel bad, you're not going to hurt our feelings. There's people that need more help and people that need less help. This is a very long lead on here, so I like that. I'm going to open this up. Now on some of the more expensive planes, they actually put a little Velcro tab up here to actually catch that Velcro and hold it out of the way. I do not see it on this particular model, okay? So that's pretty annoying because look how many hands you need to do this. Now imagine doing this on the bottom side of the plane, how much of a pain in the butt that would be, okay? So now that those are freshly glued, I'm gonna be a little bit careful because that glue will set up in mere moments, okay? It's probably mostly set up already. And now that we have that there, we're at the point where we're back to the danger zone, okay? So I'm gonna turn this on, okay? We're gonna let it fire up. Now, just because we have a model in here that's also an early release, it's supposed to come out first, we never really know. I'm gonna cancel and back. It's gonna bring me to the model select menu. I have one model in here. I'm gonna go to add new model. So if you look, it says add new model. I'm gonna click, and then I'm gonna create the acro, okay? So that's the type. You could scroll to the others. I'm gonna create what's called an acro, okay? So now we should be okay to show all the rest of this. And we're gonna start from scratch making a receiver file that is our own, okay? So we just came from model select. It pops back out to system setup once you've selected a model. And you can see the model type. If you were to change, it's gonna reset everything, so don't do that. It will give you a prompt and warn you. Model name, so this is number 2, and this is where we would normally type in. Full disclosure, I'm using a Legacy keyboard, it's the way I like it. And so this is gonna be the Timber, and so we'll type that in and come right back. All right, so we typed Timber 1.5 meter, 10th anniversary. We couldn't fit anymore, so that's what we did. It's the best we could do. Okay, so we'll hit back, and then we're gonna set the aircraft type. Now this wing has flaps and ailerons, so we need to set it up as 1 flap and 1 aileron. And you're probably thinking to yourself, but Brian, there's 2 flaps and 2 ailerons. There's 1 channel that's been assigned to control each of them, okay? So they're splitting off with Y cables, okay? So then we can change from the standard image file to whatever's in here. And I think we've got one that's probably gonna be the Cub, don't you think?
I think so.
So we'll do the Cub with the wheels, good enough. And flight mode set up, and you're probably thinking to yourself, you don't really need flight mode, do you? Yeah, kinda. It's gonna make a lot better sense. So I'm gonna use switch D, okay? Spoken flight modes, this is where we set up the part that's gonna be displayed on the screen as we scroll through. I like to have AS3X here, so that stands for Artificial Stabilization 3 Axis. And you do not need to do these labels if you don't care, but I will encourage you to do it, especially as you're new, if you're new, okay? And then we're gonna scroll from where that bar is all the way down to the bottom and come right back. Okay, so there's save, and there's AS3X mode. So there'll be an audio event, and this will be displayed on the screen about this area when we're in our regular flight mode, okay? So then we're gonna change to this one, which is gonna be off. I'm gonna make a mode that's off. Cancel, cancel, clears it. And then we'll type on the screen here, OFF. This is, again, just a label. It is not actually making the setting happen. We'll show you how to do that a little bit later in the video. We'll scroll down. There is one that says off. Okay, we got off. Okay, so AS3X mode off, and now we're gonna set up safe. So sensor, cancel, cancel. Highlight, then cancel, cancel, clears it. And then we're gonna type in sensor assisted flight envelope or safe. And this is what we use for auto leveling. It is in combination with AS3X, but you can actually separate them from one another. Nobody ever does that though. Okay, so we'll scroll down to safe and come back. Okay, so we got safe. All right, so we got safe, off, and AS3X. Remember, just labels, just on switch D. And you can also go in here and it says switch D. So then flight mode is attached to switch D. So now we have two different events when that switch changes. Okay, so we'll come back to that in a second. So now in channel assign, we have throttle, aileron, elevator, rudder, gear, and then flap. Gear is on A by default, that's fine. Flap has not been assigned yet, but we are going to use B for it. So I'm going to unselect B there. And I'm going to unselect the rotary knob from that because I'm not using it on this model. And as you can see, whoops, acknowledge your entry by clicking. And you can see they're all inhibited as well, all the way up to channel 20. So on channel 7, we could set up thrust reverse, or we could set it on 8, or we could set it on 9. I think the default might be 7.
I think 7 is default.
So I'm going to set that to switch G, and we'll come back to that in a bit. Flaps are eventually going to be attached to switch B. And the reason that it's dashed out here is because that input is selected in a different menu structure or pre-assigned to a stick condition for throttle, aileron, elevator, rudder. But you can change those, just so you know. You just don't change it here, okay? Now, there is one other thing, too. We need to make an assignment for either switch D or scroll all the way to the left to flight mode. So that's on channel 8. Just random. It doesn't matter. We could do 10. We could do 9. We could do whatever. But right now, it's going to be on channel 8. That's where it happens to be because that's what I set up, okay? So we can walk out of here. Now, first thing we're going to do is we're going to go into throttle cut. We're going to highlight inhibit, set it to switch H. I wish that was a default on. And as you can see, that's at -100. As I move the stick, it stays at -100, indicating that it's on. Now, when that's off, you can see it goes to moving up and down, okay? So that's good. Throttle cut's back on. It's been tested. Now I can go to rates and expo. This is where we're going to deviate a little bit from the setup here. They're going to show 110, so rates at 100%, and expo at 10, and then low rates would be 70 and expo of 5. I'm going to deviate from that. I'll show you my deviation. This is a standard deviation. I always do this on my setups. Whoops. We'll set this to 5. Then we'll set it to 10. So we have a doubling effect, and then we have a doubling effect from there. So that means the sticks will be softer feeling down here and more precise up here, okay? So in the middle, that's where we intend to start. So we get a doubling effect, and I want to drop my rates down to 90. And that's going to be a pretty soft stick, but we have more deflection than if we were to do the low rates here. It would be 70% with only 5% expo. Now, I'm not saying that would work bad. I'm just saying this is the one I do all the time, and I have pretty good luck. So I just start from here, and I almost never have problems. A lot of people have problems with this, okay? It is highly subjective. This is not right versus wrong. This is just a method that works well for me. You can do it however you want, but my suggestion is if you don't have an opinion, do it this way, start there. More sensitive, less sensitive. Let's say you end up, it's too touchy, so I need to go to less sensitive. Then you can set that to the middle. That becomes 20, maybe drop the rates down to 90. And then this becomes 40, and that becomes 70 or something like that, okay? So you've got like a progressive up or down movement. But in this case, you do that on the ground. But Brian, I want to have those separated. You got all these switches. Use the switches. Okay, fine, whatever. Use the switches if you want. I, for one, don't want to be bombarded with 3 different switches to remember for 250 different planes. I can't do it, okay? That's why I label my primary modes that are most critical. And then that's why I start with the standard setup. That's for rudder, which would be yaw, elevator, which is pitch, and then aileron, which is roll. Okay. Throttle cut set. Now we're going to go into flap system where we're making an assignment to switch B by highlighting and selecting. Once we acknowledge they're all at 0%, I don't know what these need to be, but it might tell us in this setup. Okay, there it is, flap system. So they're saying position 0 will be minus 100, so we can actually just copy along. But normally what we would do is we would just set 1 to minus 100, 1 to plus 100, and then we would just figure out what direction it goes. We want the elevator to correct down. As the flaps go down on an inboard, you want the elevator to go down. If the flap is outboard or all the way down the length of the wing, then it acts more like an inboard. But if you have an aileron that is acting as a flaperon that's outboard, you need the elevator to go up. Because the outboard ailerons, flaperons, are going to point the nose down as you deploy. Whereas inboard flaperons are going to tend to balloon the plane and make you climb. And then you correct with a down elevator correction, okay? This is already spelled out for you in black and white, which is really nice. So we want 0, 6, and 11, okay? So 0, and that is a positive 6 and a positive 11. Now, how do I know that? From guess and check a million times, okay? And also, we are getting close to running out of daylight, so we're hoping we can finish this up. Okay, so that's the default setting. Now, if you want to look down here, you can see where the elevator makes a correction, but it's happening fast because I didn't set this to 2 seconds, but I think 2 seconds is a good speed, and that's what they recommend here. So 2 seconds. That is what we oftentimes do. The only time I deviate from 2 seconds is when we have a really big plane. I will sometimes make it take longer because it's cooler and it gives a longer transition for the flight envelope to change, okay? All right, so we have most of the setups done. Timer, we're gonna set a 5-minute timer, which is probably way premature. Active for 1 out, anything over 25% starts it now. At 1 minute, I want a voice warning. At 20 seconds, nothing. At 10 seconds, I want a voice countdown, and I want an expiration with tone and vibrate with a tone every minute thereafter. Okay, so just to reiterate, 1 out active means when you go over 25%, it's gonna start the timer. It's gonna count down from 5. And then you can hit cancel to, or escape to clear it back and start it over, okay? So just remember to do that. Throttle cuts on. Switch G we haven't dealt with yet. We'll be dealing with that in a minute. Obviously, we have landing gear that are not doing anything yet, but we'll be dealing with that in a little bit, and forward programming. So here goes nothing. We have to bind. Throttle cuts on, throttle sticks down. We're gonna do this in such a way that we're safe. We will need to set up the poles, so we're gonna leave this right here. Camera crew is gonna jog over here for a second and show you that.
Yeah.
And this is the last setup where we don't trust the plane, okay? Also, there is a block here that prevents that central drive shaft or motor shaft from being accessible by the wire. That's good, okay? When I plug this in, I need to make sure I'm not here, because imagine this is a spinning disc. I wanna be here, and I wanna be securing the plane in case all hell breaks loose. I can secure the plane here or here, get your hands in a place where you know you can do it. Get your transmitter in a place where you know it's not gonna take out your transmitter and cause all sorts of grief. I've never had a problem doing this. We're gonna do it today, right now. Plugging it in, nothing's happened. So far, so good. Throttle hold is on. I'm gonna press this button. The beeping is safe. Don't walk in front of the prop again like that, please. That's ready to bind. Now I'm gonna click. I'm gonna scroll down to bind. I have a hold of the plane. Look. Now this is arming the ESC, and it's going through auto configuration. It's going to ask me a question. I'm not saying that we can fully trust this system yet, so I'm still holding. Okay, do you want to do this? No, I want to skip it. We just built one. If you do not use it, I don't care. Confirm. Okay, good. Now we have our plane hooked up. Throttle holds on, throttle stick is up, and there's no movement. Throttle stick is down, throttle cut is off. It doesn't start. It does start. Throttle cut's on, stick is down. Now we're safe. Now I can trust this. If in doubt, unplug, replug, and repeat the process until it works, okay? I just plugged that in for a reason, because I want to scroll over here and set up thrust reverse. Wait for the beeps. Okay, now, since there's a prop on, I want to be careful. Up elevator, left aileron. 1, 2, 3, 4. Step 2, right aileron. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, cool. So now we use this aileron and elevator to control. So we're on fixed wing. Brake is not disabled. We're gonna go over to reverse. Booyah. Brake force. Did they tell us brake force?
They did not. We just have pulls.
Okay, brake force is gonna stop this prop from spinning. You're supposed to prepare it for reverse. Set it to something if you wanna do it right. I really like it to tractor, to be honest, but you're supposed to set that. I'm gonna leave it off. Okay, what that does is it stops the poles from sliding around like this on the stator, and the ESC doesn't have time to prepare for thrust reverse, so it's hard on it. But I'm gonna go ahead and leave it off because I don't know that I care so much. Oh, and see what I did wrong? I navigated, but you're not supposed to. You're supposed to use this. By the way, this will keep working even if you scroll, okay? So just be careful. That's not a good condition to be in. You could change the direction of rotation if you had a problem on that setting there. So thrust reverse is on channel 7. We already had that right. So exit was saved, and then use the right movement of the aileron, and that'll change the condition. Now wait for it to arm. Throttle cut is on. Throttle cut is tested. I'm gonna walk away from that screen. That will only work for like 15, 20 seconds after your power cycle. After that, it doesn't let you into that menu, okay? That's why we rebooted. Throttle cut's on, throttle cut's been tested. Throttle cut's off, throttle is working in forward. I'm gonna move this switch. It's probably going to chatter. Now that's thrust reverse. Look at the plants in the wall. Okay, throttle cut's on. Throttle sticks down. AS3X is trying to correct that. It didn't. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to look at what switch G is doing on channel. What channel did we do?
7.
So that is throttle cuts off, secured the plane. That's thrust reverse. Okay. So we want it to be at plus 100 for reverse thrust, and minus 100 for forward thrust. Throttle cuts on. We already knew that, full disclosure, but we're just gonna show you the process. We went through digital switch setup, select switch G. Remember, throttle cuts on, throttle stick is down, okay? So I want this condition, which is forward, to be forward thrust. So this is gonna be minus 100, so we'll just scroll all the way to the left. That's gonna give us forward thrust. Now, we do not want to depend on this middle setting. That's a dangerous spot. You don't know what it's gonna do. So we're gonna go up to plus 100. Don't have floating controls, guys. That's dangerous, okay? So then this is gonna be plus 100. So it's gonna be reverse and reverse. And you're like, well, why 2 reverses? Isn't your normal flight mode gonna be forward thrust? Yes. But I also understand when we deploy thrust reverse is when we're on landing. So now it's like this. You see the box moving? That indicates what position is calling out what output. And you can look down here in the monitor. It says auxiliary 7. That's reverse thrust. Excuse me, forward thrust. Then reverse and reverse. Now let's test it in real time and space. Throttle cuts off. A little bit of throttle. Forward thrust. I can feel it on my arm. Reverse thrust. Reverse thrust. Okay, so throttle cuts on. I am not real excited about the amount of movement. I think it's too mean on that ESC. It's gonna end up blowing up that motor.
Okay.
So we'll scroll all the way over. Elevator up, aileron left. 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to go into brake force, and I'll show you how much better it sounds when we prepare it, even with brake force 1, which is not much. Okay, so we'll scroll down. Exit with save. Wait for the ESC to arm. Throttle cuts on, throttles down. Always distrust an ESC and prop and power system until you trust it. Okay, I'm gonna scroll back over to my main mode. Throttle cuts off, a little bit of forward thrust, reverse thrust, and reverse thrust. What'll happen is every once in a while, if you're flying at pace, it'll keep that prop tractoring and it will fail to reverse the way you expect. We've not experienced that a lot with Avians. They're very good, okay? We have with competitive offerings, okay? Clearing the timer. If you scroll over here, you can see we have min, max, smart, and we have all this. That's really helpful when you're flying. You can tell when your battery's gonna die. And then we can go into telemetry. We can go into the smart ESC, and then we can set the poles to 12, right?
14.
14?
Yep.
Okay,
14.
come back over here, please. So then you just click and scroll to 14. That's gonna help with timing and stuff like that too. Okay, then also, smart battery has 3 warnings that annoy the crap out of me. I don't care if it's wrong at startup because I'm not gonna put a dead battery in. If I do, I still wanna just be able to crash it. I don't care about discharge, overcharge, because I don't overcharge my batteries, but if you do, you might wanna leave that on. And I don't care about imbalance because this is a smart pack and it's gonna auto balance, I don't care. But I do care about these things because a 3.4 volt is a pretty high warning, but I do want a warning. I just don't want a tone because it's not gonna tell me what I need to know. I want a voice, and I want warning reports to be demonstrated every 15 seconds, not constantly. It'll drive you crazy, okay? Very good. Now, throttle cuts on, throttle stick is down. This plane I can trust. We also know that the surfaces are working. We just don't know if they're working the right direction. So let's check that now. Elevator up, elevator down. Roll left, roll right. Oh, there's no wing. Yaw left, yaw right. Very good. Very fast, very responsive. That's the way this plane's always gonna be. Throttle cuts on. I now trust this plane. I also trust this battery is basically where it needs to be, but I'm gonna be swapping it out here before we would fly for the maiden anyway. And we've been fighting weather. So just remind me, I gotta switch batteries.
We have about 10 minutes.
Okay, so putting the wing on. This wing is kind of a doohickey. You have to plug these in. There's a left and there's a right, okay? And this will go only one way. You see how it's keyed like a D? Mm-hmm. Like the letter D. Okay, so camera crew, I need you to hold the wheel. Chalk the plane, please. Thank you. That's plugged in. And then the alternative one over here, and it's plugged in. Now, there's 2 ways to deal with the extra cable. One is to tuck this right here, but as you can see, there's elevator and rudder servos there. You don't want to plug the wires in there. So what I usually do with a timber is I do this. I spin this around and violently run into my leading edge slats, like a moron, okay? So you can do that too if you want. But you see I got twists on there now? So that helps to hold this up, okay? It doesn't always work, but usually I can do this 3 or 4 times and have pretty good success keeping. It is a little bit awkward, admittedly.
It's definitely getting more tangled up though.
That's what I want.
Yeah.
Okay, so you see how it's tangled, guys? That's gonna keep that thing, hopefully, from falling down in there where you've got moving parts that will be bound potentially. Not electrically bound, mechanically bound. Now I'm gonna drop this down in here. I'm gonna put those front pieces. Can you chalk the wheel, please? Thank you. I'm gonna put that in there and then just drop that down. Camera crew's gonna hold still for me so that I can get the screwdriver. This is a lot easier with second set of hands, by the way, if you haven't picked up on that yet. You can let go now, I got it. You hear that, guys? That's what braking does. It stops it, and it also sings a song when you move it around like a harmonica. So guys, here on Brian Phillips RC, we showed the entire setup, but we have not set up SAFE and AS3X. That's gonna be the last thing we do, and the batteries are gonna die on our camera, which is a bummer because I wanna fly this thing like right now.
And we need to check CG.
Center of gravity and forward programming. Let's do forward programming after we check flaps. Come here. Okay, here we go. Ailerons, roll. Good Lord. Okay, takeoff flaps, now landing flaps. Okay, go into flaps. I want to change this to a lot less for takeoff, okay? So I'm gonna do like that. So there's takeoff flaps, now landing flaps. And for that reason, I'm gonna drop back my elevator correction to like 4, okay? Now, is it going in the right direction? Yes, because as the flaps droop, this drops down too. Okay, all the way back up to neutral and back down. Now that doesn't stop the normal performance of the elevator. It's just going to change in time with the deployment of the flaps, which is ideal. Okay, now, last thing you may need to do, throttle cuts on, throttle sticks down. Click, scroll down to forward programming. This is gonna connect to the receiver. I'm turning on advanced menus, not that it matters. Gyro settings, AS3X settings, AS3X gains. Okay, so it says we're in mode 2, it's not changing, which means we have to go to Save Select. Channel Select. Channel 8, awesome. You could also set flight mode, but it's not gonna show up as a flight mode as a choice. You'll have to select what channel you tied it to. Okay, and then in this mode, you can't tell, even though it's changing, it's only changing 2 because you have to turn on safe so that it's available. And then it opens up flight mode 1, flight mode 2, flight mode 3. Okay, so in flight mode 1, safe is on. We don't want that. So I'm gonna walk back out of the menu structure. I'm gonna scroll to the servo setup, click, scroll over to reverse, and I wanna change channel 8 to reverse, okay? Then I'm gonna click and scroll back into forward programming, connect, and then we'll recheck our menus. Gyro settings, safe select. Cool, so it says currently safe is on globally, but it's off by the setting. AS3X, however, is on. So listen, off. So what do we wanna do? Turn it off. And then what do we wanna do? Safe mode, off, AS3X mode, okay? So they all agree in time and space, which is really cool. Then if you wanna make adjustments, you can go in here and adjust gains from 3, off, and safe mode, which is the same, but you can actually highlight and change those values. I would not recommend it. Now, if you do disconnect, don't worry about it. Just make sure you go in and double check that things are still working because that does occasionally happen, okay? Gyro settings, safe select. Yep. Now, there is another way to check, but there's other settings. Fail safe, initiate, receiver bind mode, frame rate, factory reset. And then you can factory reset and then start from scratch and it loses its bind and fly stuff, okay? Pretty cool? Pretty cool. Safe is now set, let's test it. Easiest way to check right now. See how it moves to less of an output? More of an output, less, more, up. Okay? Now in off, you're also gonna notice this, look. It's quiet. Now when it's on, AS3X is not gonna do anything, but safe will. You can hear safe working, but that's because we haven't given throttle after we exited the menu, which has to be reissued. Throttle cuts off in AS3X, doesn't matter. Over 25% throttle, throttle cuts on. Now we can trust it again. And look at that rudder.
Jeez.
That's AS3X. Off. AS3X. Now safe. Elevator. Now, I'm in AS3X where we're gonna typically fly. So what I wanna do is I wanna move this and see the rudder resist impact from not the sticks. Yes, it resisted. Yes, it resisted. Now watch the elevator, it's gonna resist. And it's gonna resist. So how do you resist with an elevator? You push against the movement. You push against the movement. So with the rudder, it should go this way if I rotate the plane that way. It's gonna go with the movement like this. It's gonna resist. Yep, resist. Okay, now ailerons, same thing. Is it gonna resist? When I lift, that should go up. It does. When I push down, it should go down. Yes, it does. Now, this is not in safe, so it's not trying to auto level. Down, yes. Up, yes. Okay, everything's working the way we expect. Now let's turn safe on. Safe is down at the bottom of the switch here for our setup. Flip the plane on its back. See what happens. It's gonna try to get level as quick as possible. Quickest route to level. Yep. And elevator. Look at the elevator. It's trying to pull out of a dive. Now it's flying. It's just cruising along, doing just fine. Now, it's gonna try to pull you out of a climb and get you to level. Okay, pretty awesome. So we now know that safe is working when we're in the safe mode, meaning we have switch D in this case, set to the safe mode. We know that it's off because we hear no response, even after having throttled over 25% for a fraction of a second. And then we know that AS3X is working, and it's working in the right direction. We also know that the elevator's going the right way. It's going the right way. The rudder's going the right way. The ailerons are going the right way. And the flaps are working right. And the throttle cut works. We just shut it off. Forward thrust. And then reverse thrust. Throttle cut's back on. Forward thrust issued. Everything on this plane is set up.
Like 2 minutes.
So, at the end of the day, that's how you do it. Start to finish, Brian Phillips RC is here for you so you get the most out of the hobby, which means getting the most out of this equipment, okay? If you have questions, leave them down below. We'll do our best to answer them. Or check out brianphillipsrc.com or bprc.me if you want to find competitive offerings that might more closely meet your needs. But I do think the Timber 10th Anniversary Edition is a great option. If you've never had a 1.5, you'll want to get one of these. Check it out, links in the video description below or over at brianphillipsrc.com. Also, all the different equipment that we used in this video, we will include the 3200 4S battery, and then we need to check CG. CG, of course, is where?
It's 60 plus or minus 6.
60 plus or minus 6.
Back on page.
Okay, so 60 plus or minus 6. So how do we check the CG, guys? We turn on our calipers and we measure. We make sure that our throttle cut is on. We make sure the throttle stick is down. If it's batteried, this is how we're gonna adjust the center of gravity. So we have to mark it. So I'm gonna carefully lay this down upside down. We're gonna mark it. What is it, 60?
54 to 66.
Okay, so 54 to 66. So here it is, so 54. Good enough. We'll make a dent and then 66.
Yes.
So it's 60 plus or minus 6 millimeters, okay? And we'll just go right here, and then I'll actually just jump over to the other wing, and I'll go in from here, because you got to measure out from here, right?
Yes.
Okay, and then we'll go back to 54. So 54 is going to get us right about there, okay? And then what we can do is we can take and feel those little dents. And I usually darken them, but we're gonna run out of battery on the camera. So I'm gonna just take my hands and carefully lay my middle finger on the back hole, and it's good. And on the front hole, it's good. It's a little bit tail heavy there, and it's a little bit nose heavy there. We got perfect placement, 3200 4S, and look at this, guys. Look at this, right in the center of the tray. Doesn't get any easier than that. Guys, support us. Buy stuff from the links. Best way to support us, watch the videos, smash the like button, click the bell when you do subscribe so you get notified of all the new content. And we do have links to this plane, the batteries that we used, and of course the other equipment we used. Thanks for watching, guys. So much more. Hopefully you checked out the flight. This is the Unbox Build Radio setup. The flight is a separate video. Watch it now and find out all the answers to your questions. We really appreciate you being here another year. Down the tubes, or what do you call it?
Down the tubes?
Yeah, that's right.
Sure.
Brian Phillips RC, we love RC. My wife tolerates it, and so I'm pretty lucky to have the camera crew. So thanks, camera crew, for putting up with me for another year. Happy New Year's. Come back for more. Stay tuned.